Welcome back to Kind Regards to the show. I recently called my buddy, followed my own advice a little bit, and gave him a ring. And he hit me with a question. He'd been watching my videos, and he said that the skills independence video he really liked, but then there was another video about like deepening, less is more kind of, the two towels analogy. When you have 10 towels, they're just towels. When you have two towels, geez, you gotta really look after them. You deepen your relationship with these towels by having fewer towels. And he said, on the one hand, you're saying like do more and explore more skills. And in the other one, you pretty explicitly said, he didn't say it like this, he said it much sweeter, but you pretty explicitly say the opposite, that having having more skills. Wait, I've forgotten which one I said. In one, you say that more skills is better, and in the other, you say focus on just a few skills and deepen your relationship with those skills. And essentially, he's caught me in a contradiction here. That seems pretty obviously true. And so, and in addition to this, I got a question from a commenter that sort of said, on the skills independence video, how do I get free? The corporations have built this sort of capitalist hellscape. I'm paraphrasing here, but where do we find the time and the money to sort of get free? And so I want to talk about both of these issues. Firstly, the sort of conceptual problem with contradiction. In logic, it's one of the first sort of laws of logic. It says A cannot be A and not A simultaneously. So logic can be reduced to sort of mathematics. It looks like mathematics to me. I don't know if that's a correct technical statement there, but where you have these sort of equations of logic. If this is true, then that is true. If that is true, then this other thing is true, so therefore, boom, 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 and you get this logical chain of truth, premise, conclusion, that kind of stuff. And one of the first rules of this is that you can't be simultaneously yes and no. Contradiction is not allowed. And this seems like it's a very clever thing. If you want to work out objective truths about the world, surely you can't say that the sky is blue and also not blue at the same time. That seems very self-evident. And within our conceptual framework in the West, which is a sort of subject-object metaphysics, where everything in the universe is attributable to an object or a subject, that's generally the way, the unspoken, most of the time, way that we see the world. You want to lean on the objective side because subjectivity is just wishy-washy, whateverness. And so you want objective truth. So how do you find it? Well, you are very careful. You follow step-by-step procedure. And generally speaking, the assumption is that there is only sort of one truth about the world, one mega truth, and that slowly we are whittling away the bad truths about the world and honing in on this one sort of objective reality and getting knowledge about that thing. The problem with this, though, is that it depends heavily, in many fields, on the observer and the conceptual framework of the observer as to what is true. Truth is not so clear-cut, primarily, or firstly, because words do not one-to-one correspond with reality. Reality exists, and when we use words, we cut up reality into small portions that do not perfectly correspond. This can be easily illustrated with language. If you've ever learned a second language, or you know someone that has, or you've ever heard someone try and translate something, that you say, oh, what's the word for happy in Japanese? And they go, oh, there's a couple. And you go, oh, okay, well, tell me them. And they go, well, this one is kind of happy, but it's like more of a contented happy, and it's just in between like happy and content and peaceful. It's like in there. That's one happy. And then there's another happy that's like ecstatic happy. And they'll tell you all these versions of happy. And some of them you'll go, oh, we don't actually have a word for that in English. That doesn't exist in English. The term that they're using supposedly to grasp the world as it is, to understand the world, to have objective knowledge about the world, we just don't have it. So how could we be grasping the same sort of knowledge? How can a translation be identical? It can't, you know. So this is me just trying to break down the inherent limitation of language and concepts. It is difficult, it is impossible for concepts to fully to transmit full understanding of the things that they are trying to describe. That is impossible. This can be illustrated another way by saying that a map, if you wanted to map 1 square meter of turf and describe it perfectly, you would start by using words, and then you go, oh, but the depth of color, we can't get all the depth of color. Okay, I'll draw a physical thing and we'll get all the colors right. And then you go, but it doesn't get the depth. You don't get the 3D aspect. A perfect representation, which is what we're trying to do with words. We're trying to make accurate representations of the world. A perfect representation is actually a duplicate. It's actually identical to the thing. And thus, if we are trying to understand something in the world with words translated into words perfectly, into concepts even, the only way to do that is duplication. That's the perfect translation, which is obviously absurd, and it breaks down. And so what do we have instead, right? I'm not trying to do the objective truth is gone, so everything is just up for grabs. No, not exactly. But what do we have instead? Everyone is looking at a thing. We're all looking at a tree, for example. Or I'll use the Buddhist. There's a Buddhist sort of story about this, where 5 blind men walk up to an elephant and touch the elephant and try and describe the elephant. And one of them touches it and it says, oh, it's like a big tree trunk. It's this vast, rough, big, thick thing. It's like a tree trunk. And then the next guy goes up and he goes, oh, it's like a snake. It's like slithery and strange, and it contorts and goes back on itself. He's touching the trunk. The first guy's touching the leg, And then the last guy says, oh, it's like a big wall, because he's touching the belly of the thing. And the point is that the Dharma, the truth of the world, is perceived differently from different perspectives, and that these perspectives will, by their very nature, contradict, and that does not diminish their truth from the perspective that they're coming from. And that together, all of these perspectives together form an even higher truth, that an elephant, in fact, is all 3 of these perspectives and some. And so this is a little bit about this sort of conceptual problem with contradictions. The problem, contradictions essentially are permissible because they arise depending on where we're standing, and there is no law, there is no objective rule to say that we have to stand from certain positions in order to see clearly, in order to understand things properly. And even if there was, we couldn't all do that. We are all individuals. We are all coming to it with our own conceptual biases, and that it is impossible, essentially, to stand in someone else's shoes, to be in the position of another human being when viewing something is impossible. Even if we are literally standing where they used to stand, things have changed, we are different, etc., etc. Contradictions are bound to arise. The practical problem with contradictions is that what are we supposed to do? Someone says, too many cooks spoil the broth. And you go, oh yeah, okay. If too many people are involved, we don't have a clear vision, and then we don't have a clear vision, and so, the product is spoiled by all of these different conflicting visions of what the product is supposed to be. That makes sense. Okay, too many cooks spoil the broth. And then someone says, many hands makes light work. And you go, oh, okay, that makes sense. Like, if I'm chopping 20 onions, or 5 people are chopping 20 onions, oh, it's so much easier. The onions will get chopped so much faster, and oh, what a beautiful saying, what a great quip. But the practical problem is, which do we follow, right? I've given two sets of contradictory advice in my videos. One says do less and do it more deeply, and the other says do more, because skill independence is great and specialization is bad. These are two contradictory pieces of advice. And so what is the solution? And the solution relates to the commenter that I said, how do I get free? How do we find the time and money to do these things? And I would say that we need to listen to ourselves. As I said before, not every solution is a solution for everybody. Not every truth of the tree that we look at is recognizable to someone else. I see a tree from the perspective, the light's shining on it, and so I go, oh, it's beautiful, it's bright, it's lit up. Someone else sees it from the shadowy side, and he goes, oh, it's dark, it's quite sinister. We cannot, not all solutions are visible and clear to everybody, and also they are not always applicable to everybody. And so we need to listen to ourselves in the context of the videos, the practical sort of context of my contradictory advice. What do we have on our plate? Do we have too much on our plate? Do we resonate with the need to simplify our lives? Or do we resonate with the need to add extra skills into our lives in order to have greater competence and feel less sort of helpless and feel more competent? Which resonates with us? Which one do we feel? And which one makes sense in our context? What I don't want to do here is pretend like my advice is applicable to everyone. It's all based in my experience. My experience is not only useful to me, obviously, because I wouldn't have people commenting occasionally and saying, what a great piece of advice or whatever. And otherwise we wouldn't read any books or listen to any music, because it would all make no sense to us, because we'd be totally different individuals. So obviously there's transferable advice here, but the transfer is not one-to-one. It's not clear. It's not 100% just pick up this advice, plonk it down on your life, and off you go. It's not that simple. If we are struggling to manage with what we have on our plates already, adding learning how to sew and learning how to braise, lamb shanks is not a useful thing. That is not useful. But if we are stuck in a rut and we feel too dependent on corporations or dependent on other people, developing more independence makes sense. This is pretty clear. What are we trying to do? And the final sort of example I wanted to mention is steel. Robert Pirsig makes this example. He says, at a very basic question, is steel hard or soft? It seems pretty clear. A layman will probably say, oh, it's hard. An engineer will probably say, oh, it's very hard. It's very strong. Doesn't bend easily. It's a great material. But if you talk to a machinist, someone who manipulates steel every day for their craft, and you say, is steel hard or soft? They'll go, oh, it's soft. I can make it into anything. What do you want? I'll bend the steel. Easy. What is the ultimate truth of the steel? Is it ultimately hard or soft? That question is, in my experience, a dead end. That is a conceptual dead end. There is no ultimate hidden or ultimate reality that is outside of the perception of the reality, which is, of course, filtered by our conceptual maps, our needs, our desires, the utility of the information that we're receiving. We don't all see the same thing because we are filtering, oh, this is useful, oh, I know about plants, so I notice plants more, etc., etc. And so that's a little video about contradiction, about conceptual frameworks generally, about taking advice and empowering ourselves to leave advice that we don't think is useful to us, that we feel is separate to our contexts, that we're not ready for. I think that's a totally permissible thing. And I don't think we should be down on ourselves for doing that. I think it makes sense to do that, to listen to ourselves. Ultimately, all advice is take from it what you will. If it's useful, great. If it's not, it wasn't for you. Yeah, thanks very much. This has been Kind Regards. Catch me on Substack. I write articles there that are deeper than this and more rigorous. So I hope you enjoy them if you like that kind of thing. And Obviously, this is also on Spotify and YouTube, so check out the links if you want to watch it or listen to it instead of this. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it, and take care. Have a great day. Thanks very much.